Good afternoon everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. I know I've been a bit quiet recently, had a lot going on outside of work, but we're back. And what I thought I'd do this afternoon is, and people have asked me this a few times and I get asked it quite a lot by customers and that sort of thing. How have we got to where we are today from where we began in March 2012, so over 10 years ago now. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary of playing this silly old game of trading cars, and people ask me how did you get there. So I thought we'll have a little bit of a story time of a Friday afternoon. It's pretty quiet on the sales front. I'm pretty well up square, so I thought why not blab on to you for a few minutes about how we got to where we got to, because people wonder how you end up with, as of today, we have 32 cars for sale, retail, across 2 sites, and a 5-ramp workshop here with MOT and the servicing and all that sort of thing. And how did we get from that, from starting with a car back in 2012? So hard work, obviously, bit of luck, and it just sort of naturally happens, I think, if you get into it and you enjoy it and you're pretty good at it, which I think on the whole we are, then things happen, things progress, and you get to where you get to. So really, it all started, we started thinking about it towards the end of 2011. I was 18 and I'd been to university for a whole 9 weeks before deciding that I hated it, and didn't want to carry on and wanted to actually earn some money. I was in Aberystwyth, which in winter time is a pretty gloomy place to be, on the side of the hill there. Rain coming in sideways. I was doing subjects that I'd done okay with at A level. I did economics at A level and I did Spanish and French. I can't speak any of them now, I can barely speak English, but went to university and did economics and Spanish. It was my 5th choice uni out of 5. I didn't do brilliantly in my A levels, so it was the last option left. It wasn't really the place I wanted to go. Anyway, 9 weeks had gone, hated it. We were doing economics and it was all maths based, and I'm not very good at that sort of thing. I know how to buy a car at a certain price and sell it at a higher price, but other than that. So came out of university, dropped out. That was in the November of 2011. And my dad, Tony, who you might have seen fleetingly in a couple of videos, he was sort of self-employed and done a few bits. We've got another couple of family businesses that run, so he was doing that, but asked me what I wanted to do, and he's always been in the trade or in and around it in different ways and means over the since the 80s really. So he said, do you want to sell some cars? I thought, well, I've always loved cars. We always went and watched motor racing, and always remember being sat in my grandparents' front room window in Cheltenham, naming all the cars as they came past on the road, and that was at the age of like 3. Used to see them come past and knew all the names of the makes and models and all that sort of thing. So a bit of a nerd, even when I was a kid really. So we've always loved cars. We've always tried to have nice cars. So it was a natural thing to try and do really. So the start of the 2012, January, we started to look about, started to go to our local auction, and a couple of local auctions, and we were looking, and we had a very, very, very limited budget. I think we put 5 grand in initially, just to see what would happen really. In the meantime, I got a job at my local go-kart track through a friend. So shout out to Herefordshire Raceway go-kart track, without doubt the best go-kart track in the Midlands, no question. Outdoors, Chrissy runs it, spot on. Gave me a job back then to tie me over, and we're all good friends still, so that's good. Anyway, I digress. So I was working there, and then we decided we'd sell some cars on the side. So it took 3 months, I think, before we took the leap of faith and bought our first car. And if you go back through our Instagram on the page, you'll see that I posted it a few weeks ago when we did celebrate our 10-year anniversary. It was a 2003 on a 53 plate Renault Megane Dynamique, the old Vavavoom shaking that arse Megane with the big backside on it. There's a 53 plate, I think it'd done 80,000 miles. So obviously 53 plate back then was 9 years old, so the same now as a 2013 car. Then 80,000, blue, like an electric sort of blue, nice colour blue actually. And I think we gave $13.50 plus fees, I think. And obviously we didn't have a workshop, we didn't have premises, much like I'm sure a lot of you guys do that watch me and a lot of the other channels. Driveway selling, obviously it is hard work. You buy the car, you're competing with other traders who've got pitches, you know you can't advertise the car at anything like that sort of money. Took the car home, it drove fine. It did have a bit of a water leak into the footwell, I remember, which we sorted. Back then eBay was where it was at. Auto Trader was so much money per advert that wasn't really a viable thing to do. Stuck it on eBay, had it for bloody ages, could not shift this thing. Now, obviously when you've only got £5 and you blow 1,500 quid on the first one, when you're advertising on eBay, say weekly, and it's costing you 30 quid a week or whatever it was. Anyway, I think we had the car for maybe 8 weeks, something like that. And I think we made 200 quid, 300 quid. It went down to Wiltshire after, actually. I think we even delivered it. We made very little, if nothing at all. In the meantime, we bought another couple of cheapies. I remember we bought a Peugeot 106 that was horrible. That was off eBay. The bonnet was damaged and we lost money on that. That went back through auction. I bought Fiat Punto T-Reg, head gasket had gone, lost money on that. I think the first car we actually made any money really, I think it was the 6th or 7th car. And it was a 1998 Renault Clio, Grande RN, I remember it, in gold. S-Reg, I think it had done 90,000 miles. And I believe it owed 400, and with commission fees and everything, I think it owed £470. And I think we sold it for $795. So I think we MOT'd it. So I think between us we made nearly 300 quid, split down the middle, 150 quid each. When you're 18 and you've got another job, or obviously working at a go-kart track, seasonal, and it was part-time, but it was good hours when you were there, so you earned sensible money for an 18-year-old. I had no running costs, apart from putting fuel in my car. That was it. I was living at home. So 150 quid for your weekend is your beer money, isn't it? And that's how it worked for maybe a year. 2012, 2013, yeah. So for a year, 18 months. And gradually over the time you get used to what sells, you get used to what you can buy and what you can't buy that's going to cause you a headache. You know where to start buying from. It's all experience. You start off, doesn't matter how good you think you're going to be, it is bloody hard work to start with. We got a bit of a niche for Ford Galaxies, which are obviously Volkswagen Charans underneath. They were good cars, and we had 3 or 4 of those that were sort of 140, 150,000 miles. Even from back at the start, we wouldn't buy a car if it didn't have good service history. So that is one thing we've always stuck to the whole way through our lives of doing this. If it hasn't got service history, don't buy it. And that was probably why we were so fussy back in the day, getting going in the first place, was because a lot of the cheap stuff that we were trying to buy didn't have any history. Why would it? But I remember, we had a niche for Ford Galaxies. I think we had 3 or 4 of those, all with 150, 160,000 miles, but bang on service history. And we did really well. That was when we started to make sensible money. you'd buy it for maybe 1,500–1,600 quid, and you'd sell it for you'd advertise it at 2.5, and you might sell it for 2,3, and you'd make 600–700 quid. And obviously, when you've got no running costs, apart from advertising, then that's decent. That's a decent margin, between two people. So we went through a run of that. Started then. We took nothing out at all. We really didn't. So it was just a case of putting it back in. You start to build a little bit of a pot. And then obviously if you do that, then you can buy stuff maybe that's not £2,000 but £3,000, and that developed. We ended up with a few more cars. We had a four space driveway with one in the garage, so a 5 space really. But my mum had a car, my dad had a car, I had a car. So really we only had 2 spaces there. Cars started going to my granddad's house. We'd keep a couple there, and I'd keep one at my girlfriend's, and 3 cars became 4 cars, became 5 cars. I think we had 5 or 6. After a year or so, I think we had 5 or 6 pretty much all the time. And my adverts would get better, and the pictures would get better. And you start to meet people who can help you out and do bits of paintwork. And obviously when you start, you don't know anything. We got trade plates straight away, which is easy enough to do. They give those out like sweets really. So that took us through 2013, and sort of midway through 2013, so we've been doing it maybe 12 or 15 months, we decided that this was what we wanted to do. I was enjoying it. Decided that it might be a route to go down full time. Bear with me, I'm just going to have to stop this, and I'm running out of space in my phone, so bear with me, I'll be back in a second. Right, I'm back. So yeah, 4 cars becomes 5 cars becomes, and middle of 2013 we decided, right, this is what we want to do. We're going to go into a partnership, we're going to try and do it properly, get a premises. We thought we were, could be half decent at it. So we went for it. Spent ages looking for somewhere. Found where we are now in Ross. At the time, the workshop, it was just the workshop side of the business. So it's just an MOT and service centre. Where the car sales pitch is now, which obviously you've seen in the videos if you've been watching, that was just wasteland. So they used to put scrap cars and the stuff used to park on there, and bits of customers' stuff that was hanging about, and it was all a bit of a mess. So the process of buying the garage took quite some time, as buying any business does, and we were buying the business itself, so we were buying a leasehold, and obviously there's a lot to go through when you're doing that sort of thing. Spoke to the bank, borrowed a substantial amount of money, which you have to do at some point, unless you've been extremely fortunate in a previous life, or you've inherited lots, or you've worked, you've had an exceptional job beforehand. At some point you've got to take the plunge and say, look, it is very well saying you can organically grow, because you can start like we did with £5,000, and then you can build a pot. And we probably had, by the time that year had been through, we probably had maybe 10 grand in the bank and maybe 15 grand's worth of cars, something like that. But if you really want to grow and you want to take it to that next step, then obviously there has to be some kind of borrowing. So we borrowed a lot of money, and we put money in ourselves. I'd had some money left to me from my grandparents, which was to be used for university, which obviously I didn't really go to. So I put everything I had basically at the time in, and my dad put some money in as well, more than I did, but he put some money in, and then we borrowed a substantial amount, and we went for it, and we bought the garage. We took over on January the 1st, 2014, so we're halfway through our 9th year now. And when we came in, we got our feet under the table, learned how we'd never run a workshop, obviously. So the previous owners stayed on for a couple of months just to show us how everything works, ordering parts, trying to introduce us to, it's a very long-standing garage as a workshop, so there were a lot of customers that have been here for a long, long time. introducing us, getting used to all the staff, how everything worked. I had to do an MOT course so that I could run an MOT workshop. I'm not an MOT tester myself, but we've got 3 of them here. So I had to do all of that. And as soon as that was sort of up and running, the workshop had been going for maybe 6 months, and we just sort of got our feet under the table. We then went about renovating the wasteland into what is now our car lot. So we had this little executive suite that I'm sat in now, or the cock house as they call it, so it's got a little cock sign at the top. So did all that, re-tarmacked it, barriers, fence, everything, made it look nice, and then started to buy, obviously because we borrowed some money, have more of a pot to buy some stock. So the stock, even back then though, in 2014, most of the stock we were aiming at was trying to do low mileage like we do now, but it was still slightly older stock. So most of the cars we were aiming for were between sort of 1995 and 3995 maybe as the tops. And we did a lot of older shape Polos, 2004, 2005 Polos, Skoda Fabias, Mazda 2s, the sort of roundy one, and even before that the squarey one. I did brilliantly on those. Ford Fusions, Nissan Notes, Nissan Micras, Toyota Yaris's, all that sort of stuff. Aimed at it at that kind of market. 2995 was brilliant. Still using the same auction houses on the whole, trying to buy a few more privately. Obviously when you've got a workshop that operates day to day anyway, and you do open a car lot, people will come to you selling cars as well, so we did do quite a bit of that. And then from there, the aim was to pay off the loan as quickly as possible. So we had a fixed term on that we wanted to pay it off in. We managed to do that after 7 years, while still growing the business and improving the stock, again taking very, very little money ourselves. It's only really the last 2 or 3 years where we've sort of been able to enjoy life a bit more in terms of financially. We've got nicer cars now ourselves, and we can do, have a couple more holidays and all that sort of thing. But it took a long time to get to that until we paid that loan off, basically. It took 7 years. We were paying a big monthly payment to get it all squared away as quickly as possible. And obviously we've naturally grown in terms of the stock levels, the value of the stock, the age of the stock has obviously, got a lot lower. And then it's sort of the last 2 or 3 years really where we've got into this niche of having, it's not a niche, a lot of garages do it, but 3 or 4 year old stock, as low mileage as possible, stuff that isn't going to cause us a headache. We do all our own warranties, underwrite them ourselves, so if anything goes wrong, we'll cover it. And that's the way we've sort of naturally progressed. We've had a few workshop staff come and go over the years, but we've kept 3 are still with us that started with us nearly 9 years ago. We've lost a couple, we've gained a couple. Workshop sort of runs itself, got a really good service manager, and Kelly in the office as well runs the reception. So the workshop side sort of ticks over itself. Obviously really helps having the workshop here with the car sales stuff. Keeps us totally in control. We know exactly what's been going through the workshop, what needs doing. We can probably spend that little bit extra or do that little bit more because the boys are here anyway. I'm paying them to be here. And that's how we've grown really. We're now at a point, we opened our second site 2 years ago now in Hereford. Basically we can fit 20 cars here, just about. And it was getting to the point where we took a valeter on, so we've got a full-time valeter now, Lewis, as you know, who helps out with some of the sales side of things as well when I'm not here, and does handovers and is more than capable of selling cars. So Lewis is here, so that means I'm not cleaning cars so much, so I can concentrate on doing the videos, advertising them, selling them and buying them. And we've got the pot to be able to do that now. So the Hereford site was a necessity, really. I live in Hereford, it's by my house. And we thought, well, we've only got 20 cars, we're sort of selling as many as we think we could sell with that level of stock, and we were doing it comfortably. So then you grow again. So we had a pot to cover most of it. When COVID came along, we took one of the bounce back loans because it's extremely cheap borrowing. And because of the size of business, we were entitled to borrow a little bit more. So obviously we're paying that back now over a period, but the payments are nothing terrible at all. It was very, very cheap borrowing. I think everybody who was offered a bounce back loan, if they were in business, and they knew what they were doing, they took it because it's very, very cheap lending. That paid for our Hereford site, for all the stock in our Hereford site basically. We had plenty to put in anyway, but it covered the extras to allow us to fill that Hereford site and renovate it and make that look nice as well. And we're pretty much now where we've been in this position for maybe the last 18 months, 2 years, where we're pretty much where we want to be, as we dreamed it, I suppose. And it takes time, and there's no quick answer to it. Unless you blow your brains and borrow an extraordinarily large amount of money. What we've always wanted to do, we borrowed money at the start, we've taken the bounce back loan after 8 years, borrowed nothing in between, paid everything off as quickly as possible, the best we can. We've never had a stocking loan, so a lot of garages will have stocking facilities. So obviously they're paying not rent on the cars, but they pay an interest on the cars. They borrow the money to buy the cars as they go. And then the quicker they sell them, the quicker the borrowing ends, and it doesn't cost them as much. That is an option. We've had people come into us asking us all the time, if you had 100 cars, then possibly that would be the way to do it. But at least we know that we own all of our stock. We've got, like I say, 32 retail. We've picked up quite a few waifs and strays along the way that we've got, like the TT that you may have seen, and we've got a Peugeot 205 Rally, Land Rover Defender, Honda S2000, a few bits and bobs. So we're at a point now where finally we can start to enjoy life a bit more, don't have to work 7 days a week as we did at the beginning, but obviously then you have to be really careful then when you get to this point where you're happy with the way things work, that you don't let things slide, you don't become lazy. And then of course it's whether you want to kick on again, and that's the big question really. You know, we make a sensible living, we enjoy what we do, it's manageable with the staff that we've got and ourselves, and if you grow again, and that would be taking on more room, which there isn't available here, and it would be taking on more staff, and then you're less in control and you're having to rely more and more on other people, and then are you actually, the reason the business works is because we've got some really great staff. It's quite a small team. Me and Dad work hard, and I think we're pretty good with people in the way we do things. If you then start having loads of other salesmen and other people buying the cars, will standards slip? And obviously if you do take on lots of staff, wages are not cheap these days. So if you are taking a lot of other stuff, you've got to sell a lot more cars to make it worth the while. And that's the next question. Is it worthwhile growing again? Are you happy where you're at? Do you want to downsize and reduce costs even more and do more of it yourself? It's a very tricky one. Our lease runs out at the end of next year on our Ross-on-Wye site where I am now. So we're in talks about that to see what's going to happen. But it's business is business, and business is exciting, and there's always stuff to keep you on your toes. There's always ways to improve, and we will always strive to be the best that we can be. I'm tweaking things all the time, even now. I'm happy with the videos, happy with the pictures, but there's always stuff that you can either do to try and make more money, have bigger margins. Ultimately, the most important thing is selling good cars and making a living along the way. So that's the story of how we got here. Um, it's nothing tremendously exciting. It's just a lot of hours, uh, taking a leap of faith, believing in yourself, and believing in others that can help you run a business. And yeah, you've got to have some balls at some point to go for it. And we did a long time ago, and it seems to have paid off. You never know at the time. There's a big difference between selling cars on your driveway uh, at a lot less than retail price to then run a 30 odd car centre with a workshop. There's a lot more that goes with it. There's a lot more hoops you have to jump through. There's a lot more costs that come with it. But yeah, it's all about finding a balance, doing what works for you. We found a part of the market that works for us, type of cars we sell, type of clients that we attract, and I love it. Ultimately, I love coming to work. I love buying. I love selling. I love meeting new people. Meeting people to me is the best part of it. You have some weird and wonderful customers. Some of them great fun, some of them not at all fun. You get to learn a lot about different people's lives. So it's interesting. Every day is different. Every day is exciting. And obviously, if you make money at the end of the week or the month or the year, then and you can support your family, then happy days. So there we go. That's how we did it. Obviously, it'd be interesting to hear in the comments how you started or where you're all at now, and if you are selling cars and dealing, and you need to take that next plunge, or you're wondering whether it's worth doing that, then put it in the comments and we'll have a chat, and I'll try and get back to people when I can. Thanks for watching. Bit of a story time for a Friday, and we'll see you all soon. Cheers.